So growing up Jewish and being indoctrinated with, we don't believe in Jesus. I mean, that's the defining thing in American Judaism is we don't believe in Jesus. He was a good teacher, good rabbi, that's it. So when I heard Christians say, no, we actually believe he was God, like, wow, that's crazy. Yes, he's the Messiah. Wait a minute. And he rose again from the dead. Are you people on drugs? I hate to admit this, but I'm pretty sure that at least the way I understood it is I do all the talking. I'm the Christian. I know the truth. You're the non-Christian. You're lost. You don't know anything. So I'm just going to do all of the talking and deliver all the information. And all I'm hoping is that you go, yes.
Hello, everyone. Dennis Allen with the Disciple Dilemma, along with my co-host Raymond Monroe. We're talking to professor, podcaster, author, and apologist Randy Newman today. Randy's written a book called Questioning Faith. Should disciples question their faith? Randy says absolutely. And what does he mean when he says he's an evangelistic chicken? And how does that apply to disciples? Let's get together with Randy and figure this out. Here we go. Dr. Randy Newman, we are so grateful that you joined us today on the Disciple Dilemma. Thank you for being with Raymond and with me.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Raymond, we got a lot to talk about today because this guy is a well-known name in the area of apologetics and evangelism. And I got a lot of questions for him, but I guess maybe you wanted to start off talking about a project that Randy's got coming up in 2024.
Yes, I do. I actually tried to do my homework late last night and watched some video clips from him, and it's sort of fascinating. And I understand the book is Questioning Faith. What role does questioning have with faith? I thought faith was believing things, not questioning things. What's the role of questioning in faith?
We probably need to do more question asking in our conversations with people who are not Christians, rather than just preaching at them or dumping information on them, but asking questions and engaging in dialogues. And that just opened up for me just more and more conversations that I've had with people over the years. And so I wanted to apply some of the stuff I'd been teaching about evangelism and put it into a book that you'd actually give to a non-Christian, an evangelistic book. And I think that there are a lot of people today who are questioning what they believe or what they don't believe, or questioning whether they should even consider these things. So we played on that word questioning, but I'm very excited about this book. I feel like I finished writing it a long time ago. It's taking a long time before it actually appears. But I just tell a whole lot of stories of how some people came to faith and some people walked away or rejected faith. So just to give you a flavor, in the very first chapter, I tell a whole lot about Christopher Hitchens, the atheist,
Sure.
And a young guy who became an atheist by reading and listening to Christopher Hitchens, and then became a Christian by being terribly disappointed by Christopher Hitchens. So I compared their two stories. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm doing in that book. And I'm really hoping that people who are doubting or wondering or reconsidering will sort of eavesdrop in on these people's stories and then consider points that I'm making along the way.
That's fascinating. I actually did listen to a couple of your podcasts from other people on that, and where you were talking about the role of using questions to engage people. And the thing that really struck me is you're really engaging that person as an act of love instead of trying to do a transaction. And we, in our time, have made Christianity a transaction between me and God, where I give you my faith and I get my get out of hell free card, instead of really talking about what does it mean to be in relationship with Christ. And so I'm really fascinated how your questions really allow you to engage people. And it seemed to me to be a fascinating strategy. How do you think this book, is that something I give to them, or how do I ask them a question? How do I ask an unbeliever a question that lets me give them the book in response?
Well, it all starts with, look at how often Jesus asked people questions, or even more puzzling, look at how often he didn't answer their questions, but he answered a question with a question. I mean, it after a while, it's almost comical. You know, are we allowed to heal on the Sabbath? Well, if you had an animal that fell into the ditch, wouldn't you pull it out? Or can we get a divorce? What did Moses write? I mean, he answered a question with a question. And sure, that's very Jewish and it's cultural of that time and still of Jewish culture, but it's not just Jewish and it's not just first century. Teachers use this device all the time. We engage people in the thinking and the conversation process rather than us just doing all the talking and sort of delivering it and hope they receive it. And you know, my early training in evangelism, I hate to admit this, but I'm pretty sure that at least the way I understood it is I do all the talking. I'm the Christian. I know the truth. You're the non-Christian. You're lost. You don't know anything. So I'm just going to do all of the talking and deliver all the information. And all I'm hoping is that you go, yes. But that's not the way Jesus engaged people. That's just not well, it didn't work for me. And so I mean, isn't that weird? I would talk and people would just say, please stop talking or something. But as I asked questions and answered questions with questions, we just got better conversations. And yes, I do think it's also a very good way. It's not a device, but it's a real expression of concern and care for people and love for people. So it's not a manipulative, if I ask you questions, I can get you to get to the right place. It's, no, I respect the person because they're a person created in the image of God, and God desires a relationship. He doesn't want to see people lost. And so by engaging and listening and answering questions with questions, I think that's better. So to get to your question finally is I think we want to encourage Christians to have conversations with non-believers. And at some point, you know, say something like, well, would you be interested in reading something that could, you know, help our conversation go further? Ideally, we want them to read one of the Gospels. We want them to read the Scriptures. But there are all sorts of books that can also help them in the process. And there's some very, very good ones out there. I'm hoping that this new one that I've written can reach some people.
On balance, it seems to me that more people come to faith because they're loved by a Christian person than convinced by a Christian argument. How would you look at that balance between my engagement with somebody, showing that I genuinely care about them, and my ability to articulate the gospel?
I wouldn't pit those two against each other as if they were like watertight compartments. People need care and concern and compassion, but they also need their questions answered. There is a logical component to our faith. I mean, the Bible is a book full of words with arguments that are made. So I get a little nervous when people say, well, arguments don't matter as long as we just love people. We're whole persons and we do have brains and we have questions. So some people make the mistake of, well, no, there's no content, there's no argument, it doesn't matter, I just want to be your friend. Well, that's not evangelism. That may be friendship. I don't know what it really is, but then the other side is that it's only argument. If we just convince people of truth, and so it needs to be all of it woven together. So growing up Jewish and being indoctrinated with, we don't believe in Jesus. I mean, that's the defining thing in American Judaism is we don't believe in Jesus. He was a good teacher, a good rabbi, that's it. So when I heard Christians say, no, we actually believe he was God, like, wow, that's crazy. Yes, he's the Messiah. Wait a minute. And he rose again from the dead. Are you people on drugs? It's like, wow. So I had to be very, very convinced with logic and argument and reason. And that was a long process for me. But there was also that other side of, oh, these people are actually nice to me and they want to be my friends. And I very often say to people that when I first started going to this friend invited me to a church youth group, and he said that there wasn't going to be religious stuff. It was just fun. Now, it turned out that there was plenty of religious stuff, so I don't think he was but I heard the gospel, but I also saw the gospel. I saw people who really knew God in a personal way. They prayed all the time about things, and by the way, they prayed in English, which I thought was an unfair advantage. I thought you had to use Hebrew. So it's both. It's the relationship and the rational arguments woven together.
We are talking with Dr. Randy Newman, who is the host of Questions That Matter podcast. He's on faculty with C.S. Lewis Institute. He's been with Cru. He's written a bunch of books. I think you've already got 6 on the street, right, Randy?
Yes, although on the street, that doesn't sound good. It sounds like people are just throwing them on the street. I hope they're on bookshelves. No, I hope they're in people's hands. Never mind.
No, you remind me of Raymond a lot. You're always trying to make things accurate when I'm just trying to make things vague and general. But I love this because we're talking about the 7th book now, the Holy Number 7, Questioning Faith, coming out in February 2024. Who was your avatar, Randy? Who did the publishers make you really zero in on as you were writing this book?
Oh, well, I don't think they made. Well, I'm not sure.
I keep forgetting that you're a powerful author. The guys that beat me up and forced me to write, I had to keep the avatar card in front of my face all the time. How do you professional authors think about this? I'm guessing somebody was at the centerpiece of this book.
Thoughtful non-Christians, thoughtful people who maybe once said they were a believer and they've walked away, or people who've just dismissed it as being ridiculous and not even worth considering. But and maybe people who have heard some of the standard arguments and haven't been convinced by them.
We're talking with professor and podcaster and parent and husband and author Randy Newman, and the conversation is Disciples, Apologetics and Evangelism. Randy, I've been looking at some of your podcast lists too, like Raymond has, and I see a lot of wonderful familiar names. Our friend Simon Edwards on with you on Believable Faith. You've had conversations with Ben Hine on the issue of nuns. So, you've been around a while. So we're looking forward to you giving us the 30-second answer to this really profound question, or maybe a little longer. We're talking about the idea of disciples, nuns, duns, ex-evangelicals, the deconverts, the de-churched. What in the world's going on in Western Christianity? You've been around. Give us some big picture views of what's happening out there.
For some reason, the word winnowing comes to my mind. Winnowing. I think there's a great sorting out, and I think a whole lot of people are leaving the church. Some of them because they're realizing their understanding of Christianity is not what really is the gospel. So I think some people are they see it only in terms of politics, and I think that they're going to winnow out and leave. And then there's a bunch of people who say they're leaving because you guys have made it too political, and then some people are leaving because the world has a lot of appeal to it right now. It really does. I mean, there's all sorts of appeals for sexual expression and prosperity, and you don't need the gospel if you're going to pursue those things.
I do have sort of a fundamental question about exactly what you've just said and what we're talking about. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is discipleship is not a transaction, but it's our whole life, our identity. Yeah. And one of the challenges I think we face is that our generation grew up where everybody basically had a Jewish Christian idea that God existed and you were going to hell. And the good news was if you believed in Jesus, you didn't have to go to hell. So in many ways, that supported the transactional view. My understanding is that's no longer even a pertinent question to the generation that's coming up. and that really our John 3:16 is going to be, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one finds ultimate meaning, purpose, the goal in life, well, let's call him the Father, except through me. And so it seems to me that one of the things you're doing with your question approach is trying to get beyond that transactional understanding to really saying that being a Christian, one of Jesus's, is to know the truth that his kingdom is coming, and that I'm a part of the advance of his kingdom. So it seems to me, would you see that kind of shift as part of this cultural shift away from being concerned about going to hell to being concerned about, does life have any meaning or purpose?
Again, I don't want to pit those against each other. I mean, there is the very reality. I mean, it's called salvation. And a big part of what Jesus taught was there is such a thing as hell, and there is such a place as heaven. And so that is part of it. It's just that for a long time, I think we reduced it to only that. And so I think discipleship is helping people see and experience all of the fullness that God has for us as being created in the image of God and being recreated by the power of the gospel.
Have we lost discipleship in the West as an understanding scripturally? I struggle as I look at the statistics of the exits from the faith, the people who are inert in the faith now. We've got the Pew and the IPPR study saying 8 out of 10 people in the pews have no Bible study, no prayer life. They attend church 1.7 times a month, no community. I'm thinking about the myriad of people who are mute. 90% of the people in the pews today don't even feel qualified or want to talk about their faith. And I'm kind of tossing this one to Raymond first, but have we not constructed in the West sort of a simplistic narrative thinking that, one, guys like Randy have all the answers, so I don't need to worry about it. We'll just toss people to him. Two, my job's to show up. My job's to show up, hit the pew, catch my latte, get the kids in Sunday school, go home, watch the football game. Have we taken apologetics into spiritual judo, evangelism into transactionalism, and allowed the idea of being a doulos, a bondservant of Christ, to be lost in this conversation?
We've lost two things. One is the notion that all of us have a vocation that serves Christ, not just the pastor. And number two, that people come to become part of the church because of a loving community, not because of the effective presentation. And I think we've lost both of those. So we've turned the church into an institution like a health club.
Okay, now that's kind of the track line I'm interested in here. And by the way, Randy, I just want to tell you that Raymond uses the word disappointed with me at least 7 times during every podcast. You've only gotten hit once, so I mean, come on. Yeah, it's I've learned to live with it. It's just my cross to bear. And so what I'm really interested in kind of leaning into here, Randy, in your world, you talk to a lot of people. You've talked in front of a lot of people. You've worked with a lot of people. You've reasoned with a lot of people. How much depth do you sense in Western Christianity around the idea of discipleship versus the simplistic idea of get saved and let the apologist handle the tough questions?
The main thing that we do with the C.S. Lewis Institute is this year-long discipleship program. People read a lot. They examine themselves a lot. They get into discussions and explore. And I mean, it's really pretty deep. And we've got lots and lots of people going through this program. We call it the Fellows Program. And we're getting requests from other cities and other locations to start things. It was just a Washington, D.C. based ministry 40 years ago. And the people who started it there are a lot of really intelligent, smart people in government and in leadership positions in Washington, and yet they're pretty shallow or elementary in their faith. Let's help them match the level of depth of their faith as there is about their thinking about politics and business or whatever. So it started there, and the vision was this is just a Washington-based thing. But then over the years, people came in and out of Washington and heard about it and started something in Atlanta and Chicago. And I think we're in, I don't know, 15 different cities.
I've got to go down to Orlando next week and talk to the chief academic officers of Christian colleges and seminaries. And the subject that I'm talking about is reversing adverse trends in Christian higher education. And so one of the subjects that I'm kind of laying in front of people is we've got some great pieces of the puzzle, but the things that have flown off the wheel, the parts that have flown off the discipleship wheel in the West seem to be, one, we've defined community as a small group as opposed to having a close aboard mentor ahead of me, some colleagues alongside of me, a wingman more or less, who really knows me, who really understands who I am, and some people who are following me saying, I'm watching you, I'm trying to learn from you. Do you get a sense in the culture that you're flowing through and the people you're with that there's a richer embodiment and a growing movement to restore those mentors, wingmen, and students in the lives of the average everyday believer? How does it look for you out there?
Well, I am encouraged by some of those things you just mentioned. I think there is this hunger, and college students and later early adulthood are looking for that kind of thing.
Well, let me throw this at Raymond for just a second. Raymond, how does it look from your side of it in terms of people committing time for personal, close relationships? Do you see much of that going on in the world? And how does that look for you in the industry?
So I do see, when I get young people engaged in manufacturing as something meaningful where they're really doing it for the kingdom, they're really become excited about what they do and how they can contribute to the kingdom.
Randy, what do you think about all this?
Well, all right. So I'm going to turn this. Raymond, I'm really disappointed. Well, no. All right. So warning, spoiler alert, the next color, this might be a little tense because I'm going to disagree with Raymond. So you've pitted against a couple of things against each other, and I'm saying, I'm not so sure it's an either or. So he said he was in manufacturing. He wasn't a rabbi. Well, no, he was a rabbi. There's a whole lot of his teaching. In fact, we got a lot of it. So I don't want to pit those against each other. Pause. Everybody goes like, wow, they disagreed. Okay, well, but then now I'm going to change the topic because it's uncomfortable. So you've said, what do I see? So here's the thing. I don't have a big enough, broad enough picture. If I'm doing an evangelism training seminar for a church, or if I'm presenting, about how do we have conversations with non-believers, the only people who come to those things are people who are really sincerely wanting help with that. So everybody who's sitting there, 100% of my audiences want to grow in depth of discipleship. And when I go speak for one of our fellows groups in one of the cities with the C.S. Lewis Institute, these are very serious people who take discipleship seriously. So I don't have that broader picture. I just know that there's enough of that I'm encouraged.
Okay, Randy. So here's kind of the dirt I've dug up on you, and I really just want to put you on the spot for this. And so the bright lights are on, the heat's on. In 2010, we have caught you on tape as a member of Campus Crusade with the following quote: "I'm not an evangelist. I'm an evangelistic chicken." You want to unpack that before we send the prosecutors in?
That is still true of me. I'm pretty sure it always will be. So I've said that a bunch of places, but when I first admitted that and realized that, it was liberating. So here's what I meant. God does raise up some Christians who are bold, fearless evangelists in the Billy Graham, Bill Bright mold. May the Lord bless them. It's great. The vast majority of Christians are not like that. And so I think I tried to be like that for a long time in campus ministry. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be whatever. And it didn't fit. It didn't work. I found myself fearful all the time. And then there was this moment of, maybe that's okay. Can God use me even if I'm a chicken, even if I'm fearful? Yeah, because the power is not in my confidence. The power is the power of the gospel, the power of the truth. I very often say my confidence is not in my confidence. And then I started looking a little more carefully at things like where Paul said to the Corinthians, I was with you with much fear and trembling. And I think, yeah, that's my kind of guy. And when he was about to go into Corinth in the book of Acts, it says he was really anguished, and the Holy Spirit had to come and comfort him in pretty profound ways. He was scared. And for a lot of times I will quote and study Colossians 4, where Paul says, he asked the Colossians, pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should. So there must be ways that we could do it unclearly. But in a parallel request in the book of Ephesians, he says, pray that I may proclaim it fearlessly. Paul was asking, would you pray that God helps me overcome my fear? And I think, okay, that's liberating. So, all right, I'm fearful. I'm chicken. I do care too much about what people think of me. And so very often I'm talking to them about what I know is true. And I'm talking to the Lord saying, I repent of my idolatry of approval from people. Would you set me free from that? And it's this dynamic. And also reminding myself, I'm in this conversation with this person, and I'm asking God to give me wisdom about what to say and how to say it clearly. But I'm also asking God to do what only he can do, which is convict of sin and righteousness and judgment and draw people and make this message irresistible to them. And that's very encouraging and helpful for me, even if I stay fearful and an evangelistic chicken all the way through it. I don't think the fear for me subsides until several hours later when they're gone. Like, oh, good.
I want to thank you for saying something that a lot of people who connect with us claim to be their core fear as followers of Christ, which is, I don't want to hold a megaphone, stand on a crate on a city corner, shouting the gospel out. And you have just told us again that some are called to be evangelists, but 1 Peter 3:15 demands that even though we're not supposed to get a bullhorn and stand on a crate, we're all supposed to be ready with the answer, for the reason, for the hope. And you articulated that really well.
Randy, this has just been a wonderful time together. And we're really interested in what kinds of things you've written, what kinds of things you think. How do we get in touch with you? How do we really connect with you more if we have an interest in following your ministry and your mission?
Oh, thanks. I have a website, randydavidnewman.com. I also have a website, connectionpoints.us. They actually go to the same place. We're revamping the website right now, so there may be a little bit of trick at whatever. You can find a lot of connectedness with me through the C.S. Lewis Institute. So that's probably the first place, cslewisinstitute.org. Those are the places. This next book that's coming out is coming out through Crossway. And so Crossway's website has that book already posted with the cover and description about it. So I think those are good connecting ways.
So folks, you're seeing the cover of the book coming out in 2024, February 2024, Questioning Faith, Crossway Books. That's Randy's next one, number 7 on the street. And you've also seen, as we've been talking, the C.S. Lewis Institute's logo and Randy's website with the website addresses on that. And I just want to echo what Raymond said before, Randy. Thank you very much for being with us on the Disciple Dilemma.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. And thanks very much for having me on.
Would you help the church think more about discipleship? Would you help us get the conversation started to talk about the biblical discipleship Jesus gave us? Please follow us. Our website, www.thediscipledilemma.com. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all the RSS feeds. If you'd follow or like us, you'll help us get leverage in the digital marketplace to talk about the fact that discipleship needs to be talked about. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.